This podcast is brought to you by AutoVision and its new AI assistant, Avery. Avery delivers data-driven appraisals, pricing, and detailed strategies for every vehicle. Visit autovision.com to learn more about Avery, where precision meets profit.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News, back in Detroit.
And I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Subaru rethinks electrification as it braces for a $2.5 billion tariff impact. Waymo recalls most of its self-driving vehicles, and Tesla's board is reportedly considering a new pay deal for Elon Musk. Plus, Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel joins the show to talk about how Nissan and Honda are dealing with tariffs and their plans to turn things around after a plunge in earnings.
Investors are giving Espinosa the benefit of the doubt right now, hoping that any change is better than the track that they were on before.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry.
Import-reliant Subaru will rethink its electrification strategy, including the timing of investments. That's amid new global trade turbulence and uncertainty about future emissions regulations. CEO Atsushi Osaki said the overall direction toward electrified vehicles remains unchanged, but the pace of Subaru's rollout and the amount of money it plows into the technology are under review as the company braces for sliding sales. Subaru also withheld earnings guidance during its fiscal year financial results announcement today. It joins fellow Japanese car makers Honda, Nissan, and Mazda in refraining from an outlook. Executives said the Trump administration's tariffs could cost Subaru some $2.5 billion in the current fiscal year if the company doesn't take any actions to mitigate the impact. Subaru announced a 13% decline in operating profit to $2.7 billion in the fiscal year that ended March 31st. Revenue slipped just 0.4% to $31.3 billion. Global sales retreated more than 4% for the year to 936,000 vehicles.
Nissan's New Americas chief says tariffs are an opportunity to accelerate U.S. manufacturing. Globally, the automaker's bottom line has plunged to its lowest level in a quarter century. U.S. deliveries have fallen more than 30% in the past 5 years, torpedoing retailer profitability. Nissan America's chairman, Christian Meunier, says the import duties are a headwind, but the automaker is well positioned to adapt.
I see it in a very positive way. It's not going to last forever. We have an advantage because we have more than 50% of our sales in the US made in the US, 52. And we have upside. I can build more Rogue, and we maintain our second shift. So we're going to increase Rogue production, 60,000 units. Pathfinder, we have upside. Frontier, we have upside to build more. Yeah.
Meunier was speaking with Automotive News staff reporter Urvash Kakaria for our Talk from the Top series with automaker executives. We'll bring you more of that interview tomorrow. You can find the full write-up at autonews.com.
Waymo is recalling more than 1,200 self-driving vehicles to update software and address risks of collision with chains, gates, and other roadway barriers. That's after U.S. auto safety investigators opened a probe into the vehicles last year. The recall affects AVs operating on the company's older fifth-generation automated driving system software. Waymo has over 1,500 vehicles on the road across San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Austin. Waymo says it's aware of 16 collisions with roadway barriers between 2022 and late 2024, but it told NHTSA in a report that it's not aware of any injuries related to those incidents.
And Tesla's board has formed a special committee to review CEO Elon Musk's compensation, according to a report from the Financial Times. The move could result in a new stock options package for Musk. The newspaper cited several people familiar with the matter. The two-member committee comprises Tesla board chair Robin Denholm and independent board member Kathleen Wilson-Thompson. Tesla did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. Denholm and Wilson-Thompson did not respond to requests for comment through LinkedIn. And those are today's headlines. So, Jamie, what specific measures is Subaru taking to mitigate the $2.5 billion tariff impact?
They're pretty limited. They can try to, get a greater supply of U.S. or at least USMCA compliant, parts for their factory in Indiana. They can try to ramp up production there. They've got capacity in theory to increase production by as much as 50%. But their suppliers are really only geared for a very small, like 25,000 vehicle increase, from like 345 to 370,000. They could go to 500, but the suppliers aren't ready for it. So they could try to gear that up, but it would take some time. Like a lot of brands, they're really dependent on imports from Japan. We see similar with the Korean brands. And I think, it had looked like the so-called reciprocal tariffs were up for negotiation, but the industry-specific ones were pretty permanent. But now, after this framework of a deal with the United Kingdom, included pretty significant reductions in the auto tariffs down to 10%, much more manageable than 25%. So maybe the Japanese and Korean automakers, Subaru and others, are really hoping that their governments can also negotiate a similar scale down of the auto tariffs. We'll see.
Gotcha. Coming up, our own Hans Greimel talks about Nissan and Honda's disappointing earnings results and how they plan to deal with tariffs. That's next on Daily Drive.
Just when you think you've priced a vehicle perfectly to sell fast, the market changes and potential profit slips through your fingers. After all the work of scouring auction sites, tracking competitor rates, and analyzing market trends, the loss of time and money leaves you frustrated. Meet Avery, your AI assistant from AutoVision. Avery revolutionizes how you acquire, price, and sell vehicles by analyzing every detail, from retail values to market trends. And the best part? Avery doesn't just give you numbers, it explains every recommendation, so you know everything that was factored in. Picture this: faster appraisals, smarter stocking decisions, and more profitable sales, all without the exhausting legwork. With Avery, you don't just stay competitive, you lead the pack. Ready to see Avery in action? Visit autovision.com.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jamie Butters with Kellen Walker. Nissan and Honda saw earnings tumble in the fiscal year that ended March 31st. Nissan was hit especially hard, posting a $4.5 billion net loss. Our own Jake Neer spoke with Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel about the results and how tariffs are complicating the Japanese automakers' efforts to turn things around. He reached Hans at his home office in Tokyo.
Hans Greimel, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So, big news out of Tokyo with both Nissan and Honda this week. I'd like to start with Nissan. Of course, we've been talking about what's been likely to happen since Monday with some reports of doubling the number of planned job cuts leaking out, and then the confirmation of that from Ivan Espinosa during the earnings call. And then this news that they've booked a $4.5 billion net loss on massive restructuring charges for the fiscal year, with operating profit falling 88%. And then the aim to shut down another 7 assembly plants, I believe 4 more than they originally were targeting. Can you put a little bit of context around those numbers? They seem pretty massive.
Well, Ivan Espinosa took over on the helm in April 1st. He's the youngest CEO that Nissan's ever had, even younger than Carlos Ghosn when he took over back more than 2 decades ago. And the situation is a little bit similar. When Carlos Ghosn took over in 2000 or around that time, Nissan had its record loss, basically, on restructuring costs, and it was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. And when Espinosa steps in, he's facing much the same situation. It's not teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Nobody's talking about bankruptcy right now, but there is a huge loss. It's second only to that loss back in the day. And there was a restructuring plan already in place when he came to office and replaced Makoto Uchida. But the main message coming out of Espinosa is that they need to do more, deeper, faster, essentially. And that's why he's cranking up the job cuts, cranking up the factory closures, cranking up the cost cutting. and he's really trying to kick this revival plan that was already in place into overdrive, essentially. That's his mission right now.
You mentioned that Nissan is not quite at the brink that it was when Carlos Ghosn came in, but is it heading in that direction considering the financial situation it's in?
Well, I don't know if it's heading in that direction now because they don't expect to take any major charges going into the full year. Espinosa says that if they achieve what they have set out here, that will be enough to right the ship. They expect on excluding the tariffs, that they will be on a break-even level for the current fiscal year. And by the time they get out of this, in let's say 2027, that they should be on the growth track again. But the company will be a much smaller company by then. They want to scale back their global production footprint capacity to 2.5 million vehicles. That's from the over 3 million today. And they'll get the rest of their production through contract manufacturing or doing OEM deals with other partners such as Renault or Mitsubishi. So what his part of his goal is to bring the cost structure and the size of the company down in line with its real market potential.
So how is that playing with employees and investors? Is he winning the confidence with this really aggressive kind of plan that they're heading toward right now?
Well, we don't know. They announced this plan after the markets closed here in Japan, and it's still too early. The markets haven't opened yet, so we don't know what the immediate reaction to this will be. But I think that in general, investors are giving Espinosa the benefit of the doubt right now, hoping that any change is better than the track that they were on before. And the fact that he is taking more aggressive actions, I think, will cheer on people. Whether they think that's enough to really solve the problem or not is a question. There seemed to be a lot of skepticism or queries about that from the reporters at the press conferences. But still, they're giving him the benefit of the doubt to take things in a new direction for the time being.
We should probably remind the audience that we're recording this, just several hours before this will go up. You'll be able to see more of what the reaction from investors will be by the time you're hearing this, if you go online and see what's going on there. Now, Hans, do we have a timeline for the cuts in terms of the layoffs and when factories will be identified as part of this plan?
No, he was very unclear on that. He didn't want to tip his hand too much. He said that there are candidate factories in mind already, but they are still negotiating with local authorities, workforces, and things like that. So they can't really get too much into the timing or the specifics of the places. But this is a kind of a midterm plan, I guess, going through, the spring of 2028. So we can expect these closures to happen over that time period. I think the sooner the better, but it might not be possible to get everything lined up for a light switch turn of on and off like that.
Now, let's move over to Honda really quick because they, also saw some, I don't know, concerning is not the right word, but a drop in their earnings. They saw operating profits slide 60% in the current fiscal year. A big part of that was U.S. tariffs. And CEO Toshihiro Mibe predicts Honda will face a $4 billion impact from those tariffs. So how are they responding to that at this point? How is Honda doing in terms of being nimble in the face of something that could have such a big hit to their bottom line?
Well, one of the good things about Honda is that in terms of exports from Japan, they are one of the least exposed of all the Japanese makers. They only import from Japan really just a handful of vehicles. On the flip side, they get a lot of vehicles from Mexico and especially Canada. So there's extra tariff exposure there for Honda, and that's where you're seeing their concern. So they're getting pinched on the tariffs, and on top of that, they're also getting pinched by the slowdown in the EV rollout, EV growth. They were a standout here in Japan for betting big on EVs. They want to go all zero emissions. They're the only company here that has a timeline for going zero emissions completely. They're investing in huge electric vehicle production hubs in Ohio and in Ontario, Canada. And now, with EV growth faltering and Congress now maybe turning their back on EV subsidies, they're starting to see that maybe that bet was a little premature. So part of the announcement yesterday was that they're going to postpone big investments in the EV hub for Canada for at least 2 years. So that's maybe a twofold thing. It helps them save cash that's needed as they deal with this tariff crisis, but also it helps them not overextend themselves as EV growth starts to tail off a bit.
Talk about Honda's footprint in the U.S. Obviously, it's a really big footprint, and that does protect them in some ways from the tariffs. But these tariff numbers, in terms of the effect on their earnings, is really massive. Is there anything that they could do at this point to avoid those costs?
Well, they're shuffling around production, for example, and I think we're going to hear more about that next week. Next week, on Tuesday, May 20th, they're going to have a big business briefing. They do this every spring. It's an annual event. But next week, we can expect some perhaps bigger than usual news about how they're going to reshuffle their production footprint and maybe talk a little bit about the EV plans for Canada and beyond.
So taking both of these companies together, obviously they were both in talks to merge, which ended, and it seemed like it was over. Now with these earnings reports and with tariffs reshaping the economic landscape, does this in any way reinvigorate the idea of talking about merging or some other sort of massive action to figure out a way for Japanese car companies to band together to fight these tariffs?
Well, if anything, I think that they have so much on their plate that they just want to focus on making sure that their own company is shipshape right now. So what we heard from Mibe was that any talks about further integration or corporate integration, like a merger like they were pursuing before, is kind of on hold, at least for the foreseeable future. They've got their own issues to deal with. Nissan has its own issues to deal with, and they'll just focus on those, their own issues for the time being. What we heard from Nissan was mostly the same. They want to fix their own house up before they, start cohabiting with another company. But they did hold out the idea of cooperation with Honda on other projects, technical projects, production projects, and things of that nature. One of the ideas that Espinosa talked about was the idea that maybe Honda could use some of Nissan's excess factory capacity in the United States to help it maybe relocalize some of its production in the United States to dodge the tariffs. I think those are just talks maybe in the formative stages right now. Didn't seem to be anything major there. But that is something that's maybe more advanced, a similar kind of talk that Nissan is having with Mitsubishi that's more advanced between those two companies. So that's one thing that you might see play out here.
Anything else we should keep our eyes on as we move forward with these companies or others, and how they're both the impact of tariffs in this new economic environment on Japanese car makers or Asian car makers, or how they're likely to respond?
Well, both companies withheld earnings guidance for the current fiscal year that just started on April 1st. They are in the same boat with Mazda, which is the other major Japanese maker that has also reported earnings. All three of those companies, Mazda, Honda, and Nissan, did not issue guidance. Toyota did issue guidance. They were unusual in that regard. But I think the next stage will be seeing just how badly these tariffs impact them. And I think what you will sense across the board here in Japan is that they're all hoping that before too long, that some kind of a resolution, a negotiated resolution is achieved that may bring down the tariffs or that they face, or otherwise may at least establish some kind of visibility or eliminate the uncertainty that we face with the tariffs, so that they have at least something that they can plan for better without it zigzagging back and forth. So that's, I think, what they're hoping for before they come out with some more solid guidance.
Hans Greimel coming to us from Tokyo. Thanks as always for joining us on Daily Drive to put a lot of information and knowledge around these topics. I really appreciate it.
You betcha.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jamie Butters.
And I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to automotive news journalists Nato Akamura and Urvash Kakaria for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on earnings results, manufacturing, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com.
Come back tomorrow for more of our Talk from the Top interview with Nissan America's chairman, Christian Meunier.
Nissan is an 8% market share kind of brand in the US. There might be a few markets where we're over-dealered, but it's not the issue. The issue is the throughput. We need to fix the throughput.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.